So I've been told that my story is a bit unusual. I was born and raised in a small town not far from Chicago where I grew up in a family of 10. We were Catholic, but not deeply committed. But as it would turn out, and for a number of reasons, I would go on a journey through a wide array of churches and Christian experiences during my childhood. And along the way, I'd been baptized 5 times, once in a lake, 3 times in a church, and once in a bathtub, twice by the same minister. I believe I was sincere and genuinely interested in God, but I had never been discipled. And so when I was still a teenager and left home, I took a pathway that ended up in a very dark place marked by drug addiction and alcohol abuse. But I reached the end of my rope pretty quickly though, and on a morning in late August of 1980, at the age of 20, I came home after a long night of partying, and I had a drunken but serious conversation with God. I basically asked him to make himself known to me in a real and convincing way and to change my life, or to accept my resignation from this seemingly meaningless existence. And after that, I passed out on my bed. Several hours later, when I woke up, I was a new and very different person. God had actually come to my room and had changed my heart in my sleep. And I was so dramatically changed that my friends and family could hardly recognize me. I was truly a different person. And then a few days later, God spoke to me to sell out and go into the harvest field of souls. So within 1 week, I had sold everything I owned, left my hometown, my family, and my friends, and I started witnessing on the streets. 2 weeks later after that, I met a missionary, and this fella invited me to go with him to the Philippines. So on October 4th of 1980, at the ripe old age of 20, and just 5 weeks after my salvation, I was in a third world nation under a dictatorship and martial law, determined to win the nation for Jesus. So I may not represent an orthodox process of becoming a missionary, and in many ways we've done what people thought shouldn't be done, getting into ministry so young and so fast, for example, or that couldn't be done. Of course, I've many stories to tell, and it was hard. A few years in, my missionary companion left me alone and with a choice to go home or to carry on. I stayed and carried on, and the short story of this is that God allowed us to go on and develop a gospel ministry team of as many as 75 people at one time, living together in a mobile camp of tents and trailers, moving from place to place with our huge gospel tent. And we would have the privilege to go on to reach millions of people and to see hundreds of thousands of Filipinos commit their lives to Jesus Christ. Now, for over 20 years, we were governed by one way of thinking, which was the original passion that God gave to me, and that was to reach the unreached people and preach the gospel to them. That was it, pure evangelism, and we were really good at it. But then, surprisingly, God began to change our thinking, and as a result of our strategy of reaching the nation also changed. And over the next several years, God took us on a journey from a one-dimensional mobile ministry team into a center-based ministry that is now impacting the Philippines through 4 strategic ministries. One of the first new things that God led us into was Compassionate Care Ministries, which, besides helping the sick and feeding the hungry, also involved setting up our Face the Children program. It's a ministry that serves abandoned and abused street children through full-time protection and care. The next new thing God directed us into was education, and we now have a beautiful school called Frontline Christian Academy, where we evangelize young people and their families and bless them through loving Christian education. But perhaps the most radical shift for us was social enterprise. We've undertaken to establish businesses not only with the aim of generating revenue to sustain and grow our mission, but to love and evangelize people by providing jobs in a godly Christian environment. Church planting. We have a whole bunch of frontline churches now and are also mentoring hundreds of other churches to also change their way of thinking, to expand and reproduce themselves. The pandemic was a catalyst that God used to further change the way we think about church planting and development. And rather than simply waiting for the old status quo to come back, we were led to innovate by further downsizing to even smaller churches with more leaders. I'll end by saying that I believe God expects us to be willing to move with Him and to innovate, to change our thinking and our strategies. And if we will allow a disruption of our paradigms and press into new things that God is leading us into, we'll likely find opportunities that might surprise us.